All right, Jeff, welcome to the campfire.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I'm excited. Love the format. I think we can solve a lot of problems around a campfire.
I agree. I think that's the biggest thing that I've discovered by doing it this way is it opens up a very unique and a very special conversation.
Yep.
'Cause when you get together with somebody on a podcast, a lot of it is kind of almost robotic and it's preset in their minds of what it is they're going to say, how they're going to present it. But then you jump on a call like this and it's like that kind of knocks you out of your comfort zone and it brings a lot of vulnerability out.
Yeah. I've walked up to, a community campfire before with a cold one in my hand, sat down and only to figure out hours later, you've made 10 new friends and you found some of the most interesting conversations. So yeah, I totally get that. Cool stuff, man. Good.
Unique way of problem solving is what I found.
Yeah. I told I coached ball during the do some rec ball, and your example is what I had used with them. We got to the All-Star game, and we had one game left and chance to win. And I had used this a couple of times, but I sat down with them. I was like, guys, this is an opportunity that you don't realize how big this is for you. And I was like, this is a story you're going to sit around and talk about in camp around campfires in years to come. And you're going to remember this moment because if you ask any adult who got to experience this, so I was using the campfire thing. I'm like, it always like it, you never going to this memory will always come up sitting around a campfire.
It's very true. And I think one of the coolest aspects of that is when you're walking through life and you come up to an obstacle that you say, this is unprecedented. I don't know
Yeah.
how to get across it. But you can look back at those memories and you can kind of start to gauge the process to get through it and around it based off of those past experiences or those memories that you've shared with somebody over a story and all these different unique things.
If you've had a positive influence from a coach, mentor as a kid, that's when I find it. Like I didn't have my dad coming up. I don't know. I never met him. I had positive male role models in my life and female, but I can remember sometimes in those moments of being tested to where when you don't have that, you can't pick that phone up. Hey, Dad, I'm kind of in a situation here. Is you go back and I think like, hey, what would Coach Dan think right here? And I go back to those childhood or some of those memories of sitting down with my mentors and just like, all right, what would he, what would we be, what would his suggestion be? So that person may be passed on, not in your life or whatever, but that moment that's created is something that comes up sometimes at the perfect time that helps you navigate through some of those adversities.
You bring up an interesting point because I can relate to you on growing up without a father.
Yeah.
It makes certain things seem very easy to fall into.
Oh yeah.
So, so you definitely got to learn to become more mindful about things. You got to be more present. And these are things that, a lot of the time when adversity comes up, it kind of jars us and we forget about. We feel like we don't have the ability. But slowing things down and getting back to your routines, bringing yourself center, it's almost natural if you're aware of it and if you're willing to go there.
It's good breath work. You don't overlook that. And I try to teach breath work. If someone is struggling to get through their day as an admin assistant that's just having a hard time processing, I work with them on just breath work. I'm like, you're letting yourself become anxious because you're not doing good breathing and your body feels unsafe. It's like doing that has been a good game changer as well. And I'll tell you the other thing when you talk about not having sometimes not having a dad's good too. Because I know I have friends that had dads that were jerks, right? And had they were struggling to figure out how to grow up as well. And I also had just as many negative influences. And you'll hear me if you ever hear me speak. I talk about this, depending on the situation. But my grandfather, we had a family store, and then my grandfather, he was a little bit of a hellraiser, and so the cops was like at our house all the time, whether it be something going on at the store, whether my grandfather had done something dumb. So that's what I put a post up, and I kind of encouraged me to speak about it. It was like when the cops are at your house all the time, you're either going to be a criminal or you're going to be a police officer. It's going to be one or the other, and that's just the influence that you're going to have. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy lifting, and I think sometimes me and my mom has talked a little more here lately just about things and growing up in life and how we processed it back then versus how we process it now. And I was put in that role to where, as helpless as we were at times, I wanted to go do something where I could go help, where that problem would never happen to me and my mom, or me and the folks that I was around ever again. So that was kind of the path I took toward law enforcement to help alleviate that too. So not all role models are positive. It's always good to have an extra set of eyes come in and say, hey, that's not good for you. Because if not, you're living in a little bit of chaos that you think is normal.
I think that gets back a lot to the idea of perception, though.
Yeah.
Epictetus talked about how you can either view life with the smooth handle or the more difficult one. We all want to go and take that smooth handle and have the easy life, but it's all about tuning that perception
Yeah.
and really putting everything up for review, evaluating how it affects you, what you can learn from it, and how you can utilize all those lessons to go forward in that journey that is in your heart to find that destination.
If you don't, you touched on it there, and I'm a firm believer. When I was trying to find easy roads, life set me down some hard ones. And if you don't choose your hard, life will choose hard for you. And if you can figure out some daily, just like we were talking about, when we were shooting the breeze before we hit record, was ice fishing in Michigan just sounds cold, right? And so it's a certain thing. You got all the comforts that you bring in to make that an enjoyable experience, but just the sheer fact of me not exposed to that automatically puts a little bit of, wait a minute, that would be uncomfortable. And I just got done working out today, and one of the most uncomfortable things we can do is just put our body under what I call positive stress, and just a positive stress load, something that pushes you into those uncomfort areas, taking on new skills, trying new things. There's a certain point in time where I'll probably end up in Michigan, and I'm going to say, "Hey, Mike, I need you to take me ice fishing," just because I can choose that uncomfort. But and if we don't do that, or if we try to avoid that, if you pay attention, sometimes life kind of will find you at that blind intersection and hit you head on with its own uncertainty and own uncomfortableness.
And that's where I like to utilize the outdoors
Yeah,
because, you're putting yourself out there in the elements and you're in the process of building a skill set to make it more comfortable. You're learning along the way. And, for me personally, my journey involved a lot of rewriting self-talk and
yeah,
discovering self-worth. And I did that literally one swing at a hatchet at a time, along with one footstep in front of the other.
yeah.
When you tack into the thrill of the adventure, there's fun there. So we don't think of it as work, but we're doing all these different things in the background that help us within our day-to-day life that brings us again closer to building that world that we feel in our heart we want to exist within.
I had a friend, man, back in the early 2000s. I was kind of just stressing myself out, trying to live the way I was living, and balancing. And I was in kind of a relationship struggle, and my friend Kenny, he was like, "Let's go split some wood." And I'm like, "I'm not going to split wood. I don't understand. No, I got other stuff to do." And he's like, "You don't get it, man. Come split some wood with me." So he and I end up in Canada, we're over just north of you, up through the Sioux, and take a right out this little place called Rock Lake with a friend who's got a place up there. So we're hanging out there in the camp. He's, oh, we need to split some wood, and we started splitting that wood, he and I, and I think we had, I think maybe we had two axes, or maybe we had mauls. We had some mauls, so we had two of them. He'd swing and I'd swing, and we were just shooting a breeze. And man, you want to talk about the realization that I had put that off way too long, and this is where we kind of coined that phrase. He's like, I tried telling you this was good for you, and I said, well, I didn't say you was wrong. I just didn't want to listen to you. But man, splitting that wood was one of the absolute best things that really led me into just got me in a happier place. And once I learned that positive of, like you said, swinging that hatchet, swinging that maul.
Then when we think about the adversity, we think about like the stories that we tell ourselves, right? That we put ourselves in. Like for a good example, I've grown up in Michigan. I'm used to the cold winters, right? And this winter, I'm going to be heading over toward the New River Gorge area to do
Yeah,
a little bit of exploration.
just there the
And
other
it
day. Yeah, just I'm seriously, my wife walked underneath that bridge about 2 weeks ago.
really,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of, it's going to be January when I get out there, so I'm kind of preparing for, say, the Michigan winter. And in the back of my mind, when I'm preparing myself and I'm getting ready to start packing, I see myself packing up basically everything I would go for a Michigan winter in the exploration. And I'm kind of weighing the balance. I'm not exactly sure what I'm walking into, just like a lot of the adversity we face in life. But I've got some sort of recollection of winter's going to be this. Do I adapt it or do I just go with what I know? And I feel like that's a question a lot of us have to face.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a little bit of um, we're smart enough not to be prepared because you're going to be prepared, but there's always those little bit of unknowns. We were standing down when we left. We came out through by the where you stay there. It's kind of we stayed in Airbnb, so it's up high. Um, and then when we left, we went down to where the New River was, and there's like a little national park or state. I think that's a national park there that helps oversee that part of the New River. And I'm serious, man. I'm standing out there with my son, and me and him's talking, and it's maybe another couple there or something other. And I was like, the water's moving, and I was like, I bet this is wicked cold. You know what I mean? I'm like, in a few weeks, I bet this is going to be wicked cold just right here in this little hollow. And we were talking about that. Now you're gonna go experience that, and it did. It did because it's not. And here's the other thing I think that leans into that, Mike, is when you not like if you come to my home county or where I've traveled to or whatever, you'll see comfort because I know where to find. I know where my resources are. I got my bearings. But down under that valley, and I'm relying on a phone. I'm relying on my GPS to get me in and out because I don't know the lay of the land.
Sometimes that's the fun part.
Yeah,
I remember, probably some of the most useful advice I've ever gotten was sometimes you just don't need to know. You
yeah.
need to just go
Let's go.
and
Yeah.
experience and realize that within the skill set based off of the experiences you've had in life, you had the ability to craft comfort within the environment that you're there because all those resources are always around you.
Yeah. Now you're especially these days. I know people that did what you did back in the day. They would just go and find a trail and hop on that trail and set up camp and explore and all sorts of things. But we have it. We can plan a little more, and you're conditioned, for those elements. And it's not to say that the folks that aren't conditioned. Now, you probably don't want to just head out with a tent and go to the New River. If you've never done anything like that before, it's probably you might want to do some better research, talk to Mike, right? Figure out some essentials that you need to make this work. But I think there's a lot to be said for that. Well, we sent our kids 2 summers ago. We sent them to outdoor camp. Same thing. Just go sleep under the stars. Very controlled environment. They're sleeping under the stars. They're a couple miles away from their base camp. So if they were where they all head out of, and they would come back to there to just so the kids wasn't 100%. But then as they get older, they do a full. You're gone for a week. But both of them were like, man, there was 1,000 things I'd rather been doing, but they really appreciated the experience of being learning. So I try to tell them like, you don't know what you don't know, and when we're so comfortable, we got hot water. You go up, turn it on, it comes out, and I didn't. If you hear any of my talks, I got to tell people I didn't go to bed hungry. I can't say I wanted, right? I didn't go to bed hungry, but there's a point in time when we didn't have running water inside of our house. We would bucket water up and boil it, and people would bring us water for potable, for drinking water and stuff. But that was a brief. But my kids, unless if I sent them to that outdoor camp, they never would have experienced anything like that.
That's another important factor is being willing to put yourself into positions like that. But, to go back to where we've been kind of traveling with this, and when it comes to the idea of adversity, you throw a backpack on your back and to go out, you think you've got all the different tools and accessories you're going to need because you've done the research and you're trying to foresee keeping the advantage in your hand no matter what you come up against. But a lot of the time in life, we struggle to do that.
Yeah.
We kind of find ourselves in a position where we're like, I never imagined I could be where I'm at right now. I never thought that everything could fall apart. So therefore, I'm not prepared. And I think that through backpacking and through outdoor adventures, you teach yourself to prepare yourself for the unexpected.
Yeah, that's you're spot on with that because we live inside that comfort, and if you're not exposed to, um, if you don't generate some exposure to something uncomfortable, life's ever I still struggle with the fact that like homelessness is still an issue at my age, right? Of where I've been, I was born in the '70s, right? So I have this like, oh man, that because we're so prosperous now in so many other ways, and we have made way more resources and things along those lines, right? So some of those folks are there in situational type stuff, but for the most folks that are going to have the ability to listen to this podcast, right? But that's probably a great example. The folks that are going to listen to you and I's conversation, they have access to technology, they have all sorts of other things, and they get to choose, and they don't. In working with teams and helping in conflict resolution and stuff. And my worst day is absolutely horrible in my head. But I had a friend kind of help me explain like them being 10 minutes late for work it's their worst day because of how they process it. So I had to learn that too. People process their worst days differently than me because like I coming out of public safety, we saw things. We got exposed to a lot of trauma growing up in violence and um, you know things along those lines. I've seen way more, but other people still process their worst days as if they were mine.
That's another thing that I feel like, mindfulness, being present really opens you up because you're able to utilize that power of observation. And you look at the course of your day or the struggles that you're up against, and you don't put that biasness to it. You don't put that, I've experienced things this way, so it's got to be horrible. It just makes it a lot easier to stay the course, to do things which, present within the moment and not hang yourself up on all of those more difficult or horrible stories that we can get caught up in.
I'll say that, and then I also try to remind folks that growth's not always up. When you look at progress and money and business, or whatever that looks like for you, we equate our success to where we're like an elevator sometimes, and our money, or that graph, or in business, your money's profits are going up. And I always remind people that growth sometimes is establishing very, very deep roots, and whatever those roots need to be, to help fuel our upward growth. But then, some of our growth is also very outward. And like I think I used a bush as an example the other day, to where it kind of just grows. It doesn't grow all the way up, right? It just grows. It grows out, and you have these relationships, and you create these moments and things. And you may not always see your growth in wealth, is what in monetarily wealth, is what I try to remind people. And when you get right with those elements, and you can kind of foresee that, or you can really say like, oh, it's like an eye-opening thing where you're chasing over here. Sometimes that leads to, because you put all those pieces of that root structure in place, that allows you, and then you start acknowledging that linear, that the growth that's going out from all directions, and you quit taking that stuff for granted, and the relationships you've built and all those things. And then it allows you to really start fostering that upward growth, or those dollars, or those better relationships, or whatever you need at that point in time. It's reminding people of that too, I think, is super helpful.
It's really helpful to step away from the distractions and teach yourself to become aware of all the things that are going on behind the scenes. Because there's always growth, there's always change, and there's always progress one way or the other.
Yeah.
And as we come toward the end of our time, I want you to talk to somebody a little bit that's starting to put those building blocks together, that there's so much going on behind the scenes that can help them through the adversity. Give them some tips to get that next step forward.
You know, if you want, probably the biggest realization I had was, life's going to continue on, and you get to dictate those terms. You're not, this moment or wherever you are, even if you're in this, like with me, to where you're in, you're in a 20 some year atmosphere that you was kind of told you had to accept, and you're ready to make a change. Not on my podcast, I've interviewed a couple folks that was in cults, and they know a way of life until they realized they was in a cult. Now they're trying to start off on a new life. And as long as you're living and breathing, life is going to continue on. And whether it's through setbacks, whether it's through wherever you're in this situation, just remember that failure is your best teacher. So we want to take a look in learning, from all those failures. And if they're not failures on your own behalf, but like whether it's family, whether it's work, whatever that might be, is realizing that you're just there because of you're there in that moment. And you should stop and pause and do that breath work, and really pay attention to what life's trying to teach you, what lessons that you're trying to learn, and acknowledge those lessons that you have that you've learned along the way, the struggle. And then what happens is, because you're so used to a normal, regardless of your next step, you're stepping outside of your comfort zone. So stepping outside of your comfort zone feels uncomfortable, and it should. And you don't have to do that alone. You can find that we have stuff at our fingertips now. You don't have to, you can listen to this podcast and find some inspiration from Mike and I. You can find someone who has been where you are, who's escaped that, who has made that path to where you try to be. Reach out for them and say, hey, I'm where you work, and what were some of the steps to help you get out of there? Progress comes in phases. You're not going to be this overnight or whatever. It's focusing on winning each day. And when you first get started, sometimes you got to win your moments. You got to win the hour. I've worked with folks that struggle. Jeff, that's all I can do to get out of bed. I'm like, that's what winning looks like. Is then when you're able to take a shower, put your shoes on, walk out the door, that's another win. And we're going to stop and celebrate that until we can get to where those are just Um, those are just regular commonplace things that we have. So when you look at that as building into those the progress coming in phases, and just remembering, celebrating those wins, getting outside of our comfort zone in that positive manner, and then self-reflection, I think, is probably one of the things where you can really allows you to it allows you to create a better relationship with yourself. And somewhere along the line, somebody has negative self-talk, negative doubts, all the things. You ain't worth anything. You're never going to be anything. Whatever this looks like to you, is just remembering that self-reflection is essential. And when you put all that together, I think you'll find that resilience is built in struggles. And then once you're if you can win your minutes, it allows you to win your hours. And if you can win your hours, you're winning your day. And when you start to win your days, you win weeks, you win months, right? It's just this, it goes, it comes at you, but don't try to go alone. Yeah, I tried. That's mistakes I made. I didn't, negative self-doubt is a killer. You need to have somebody around you that's pumping you up. And it might be a group, it may be a whatever, but I think having the right people, you're going to be a product of the 5 people you have in your life. So if you're broke, you're hanging out with broke people. And that's just a hard example of looking at that. But if you're negative, take a look at your 5, 6 friends that you let in. You're probably they're probably negative, and they're influencing you to be negative as well. So sometimes you have to put up boundaries to walk away from folks like that. But you know, if it was anything I could ever say, is don't get caught up in your own selfishness thinking people care. They do, but they also have their own crap that they're dealing with. They're going to care about you to a certain extent, but it's up to you and they're going to put their resources around you, whatever, but don't not take action. And this is why I say that about the selfishness. There's a point in time when I thought everybody cared about some of the knuckleheaded stuff I had done, to the point to where I was just afraid to re-enter into that world. So everybody's got their own lives and dealing with their own things, but failure is just a part of it, man. Failure is your best teacher. Do hard things every day. I think that's probably the things I would go down the rabbit hole over and over again. I think is key. Acknowledging craziness, acknowledging dysfunction. I'll tell you something, Mike, that's good. Having an outside set of eyes. When my wife walked into my life, she was like, "Whoa, what the heck?" So just making sure you surround yourself with the right people when you get into these negative moments is helpful too.
It to me, it's really a matter of just looking for that progress, to build that momentum, and being mindful and aware of your surroundings.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, though, you got to let people know how they can get in touch with you, what you got going on, all that good stuff.
Yeah, my website's pretty simple. It's jeffreyrobertson.com. Um, I work a lot with building teams and helping people. If you have someone who's trying to move their way up into leadership, or taking on new roles, or just kind of tired of living in that hamster wheel, and then I work with business teams and things along those lines, and I spend a lot of time doing business, and so I love business coaching. So I kind of let my client, um, tell me what direction they want to go. Right now, my project is I'm working on helping a one person company kind of help move through their systems and processes and craft a better message through the social media and things along those lines. So I work on I cast a wide net. Sometimes that's why it's hard to find the right people. But and then I tell you, between my teaching and doing workshops, I really enjoy speaking and telling my story of how I'm coming up and some of the craziness that I dealt with as a kid that led into law enforcement, that led me into kind of where I'm at now. So jeffreyrobertson.com. And then if you jump over on Instagram, I go by Jeff, Rabason on there because my last name wasn't available. But Jeff Robertson, if you message me, that's me. That responds. I don't have any team that looks after that stuff for me, so I enjoy the conversation. So, website or Instagram is the best place to find me. And if I have a solution for your problem, I'll share it with you. And if I don't, I'll send you to someone who can.
Awesome. Jeff, thanks so much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation, get to know you a little bit. I look forward to hooking up again sometime down the line.
Yeah, sounds great, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I don't believe in goodbyes or two finals. So till we meet again, whether it's this life or the next, I wish you a safe and prosperous journey, my friend.
Yeah, thank you.